coordinator for Open Science Working Group. Absolutely one of the best, let's say, persons here to explain what young researchers, how young researchers approach to scholarly communication in new circumstances. And also Dr. Luka Šušterišč, member of many bodies here in Slovenia, member of a decision-making body at SRA. He was also involved into Slovenian national strategy adopted in 2015 on open science, adopted in 2015. And also Luka is member of our negotiation consortia, CTK Consortia negotiation group. And on the end, he is head of Institute Jožef Stefan Knowledge Center. So also absolutely the one with many ideas how to improve scholarly communication in our environment. So if you allow me, maybe we will start. But before we start, on the screen you can see currently situation in our Slido. We got 13 questions. And now the list of those questions based on popularity or those likes for questions. However, I will try to involve these questions to the context of what we will talk. So please, if there is any question, additional questions, just go ahead, please put it in the Slido or just disturb us, stop us and ask people here to explain and answer your questions. First of all, we would like to start with Plan S. Why? We all, I mean, our professional community in Slovenia were a bit surprised, and it was very good news for us that Plan S were signed by Slovenian main funders, SRA, Slovenian Research Agency, and this is absolutely a crucial step for Slovenian research, and also Plan S as it is crucial, very important to push transition to open science on more dynamic level. And what is for me, my first impression, that announcement triggered a big response in our environment. I will try to refer to Stephen Curry. He says Plan S means a significant shift in the open access publishing movement, which has been slow progress to make scientific literature freely available online. So this is just one of many statements during last week. My first question is, why is this agenda actually so powerful and so ensuring and so important for open publications and open science at all? I would start to answer. I would like to ask to answer this question. I would start with Paul, and then after, if you allow, everyone can do some comments, and also the audience is very warmly invited to collaborate in this, to participate in this discussion. Please, Paul.
Oh, right, thank you. So, I'm honored to be the first person to be asked to speak. Why is so? I'll answer, if I may, two parts of what I think is Miro's question. Why is Plan S important for open access, and what impact will Plan S have for LERU-type universities, so research-intensive universities? If you try and identify what the role of a university is, why do we have universities? Why do they exist? Why are they some of the oldest established institutions in Europe? Why do they still exist when other institutions which have also been set up have long disappeared? The answer is because the purpose of a university is to embed itself within society and make a difference to the way that society lives and develops. That's the purpose of a university. That's why we do teaching and why we do research. It's not primarily about making money. It's about adding value and doing good. That's why universities exist and why they still exist. How does open access help with that agenda? It helps with that agenda because there is greater transparency in the way research is done and the way research is shared and made available. And it means that all levels of society can access the work that universities are doing and for which they are paying in one way or another. In my country, through student fees, where the student is paying, because we charge enormously large, hideously large tuition fees to students, because the state doesn't pay anymore for university education. And in other countries where the government pays, or it comes from taxpayer money, the student and society are paying for universities. In an open access world, everybody, all those stakeholders, can benefit from the work that universities are doing in the way that they can't do in the current subscription model, where subscription acts as a barrier to access to many parts of society, to students once they've left, and to members of society that don't go to university at all. So it is a good thing. Open access is a good thing. And that's what Plan S is designed to do. It's designed to promote that value that universities bring to society as a whole. Will Plan S work? Well, I drafted the PR statement, the press statement for Leru in response to Plan S. I said something very similar. We say something in the press statement very similar to what Stephen Curry, my colleague from Imperial College in London, has said about Plan S. Plan S is a kick in the backside for open access in Europe, which has stalled. And as we saw from the Clarivate figures in the presentation this morning, has not made the kind of progress that open access supporters like myself would have hoped that it would make. So, Plan S is about getting everybody on the same page. So European funders, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, the European Research Council, and national funders. One of our own national funders, UK Research and Innovation in my country, your research funding agency here in Slovenia, have signed. And that is about fast-forwarding the open access agenda to maximise the value that universities bring to society as a whole. Will it work? I don't think, personally, it will work by the 1st of January 2020, because I think that's unbelievably ambitious. Will it work in the longer term? That depends. It needs more research funders to sign up to it. Some UK research funders, the Wellcome Trust, the biggest funder of biomedical research in Europe, which lives around the corner from me in London, just around the corner in Euston Road, have not yet signed. I think they will sign. I don't seriously think they won't, but they haven't signed yet. So, and to change the publishing model, it's not enough just for Europe to do this, because Europe is a significant player in global publishing, but there are other countries that publish more than we do, more than Europe, North America, and China. If Plan S is going to work, these countries have to sign up to the principles in Plan S as well, and they haven't signed up yet. So I think it's an amazingly exciting challenge. It does give a kick to open access that it needed, but I think the jury is still out on whether it will achieve what it intends to achieve. And I'd be really interested to hear if my colleagues on the panel agree with me or think differently.
Okay, yeah. Well, I hinted a bit about the perspective of OA 2020 on Plan S, and the fact that we have various stakeholders in scholarly communication. We have the research funding organizations, and the biggest takeaway I have for Plan S is indeed a kick in the pants. The funders have said, enough hybrid funding of hybrid open access was meant to be a transitional mechanism, but how many years on now, it has not resulted in transformation, large-scale transformation, so it's time to rein in that spending. I view it, or we view it, as a call to action, therefore, to the rest of the players to pick up the slack on our end, and for the institutions who are continuing to propagate the subscription business model by continuing to invest in subscriptions. It's time for us to step up to the plate like the funders have and start converting our subscription funds into funds that support open access. I might respond also directly to one of the questions that are posted on the board. We had a couple there. How does Plan S influence traditional subscription models? And another one, the deal roadmap systematically supports hybrid publication. Isn't that in conflict with Plan S? Plan S influences traditional subscription models by the virtue of the fact that it's not considering hybrid publication as compliant, okay? And about deal, I'm not directly involved in the deal negotiations, but I can say that it is true in Germany, the funders have not signed up to join Coalition S. And I think there are two motivations behind that. This is just from my own personal knowledge, so it's not an authoritative response. One is related to the concept of academic freedom of authors, so not wanting in any way to influence their choice. But I think more importantly is the fact that funding of hybrid has not been happening in Germany to begin with. So the question is moot, I would say. And the fact that transitional agreements like offsetting or publish and read, which the project deal negotiating team is trying to achieve, the fact that you could call that hybrid publishing, the point is it's a transition. We need a way to shift the money from subscriptions to open access. And with that transition, right now we're in a situation where we have journals, and everything happens at the journal level, or even at the journal package level. We need to move into a scenario where the transaction is at the article level, and that is the real focus of the transitional agreements, to drive us in that direction where the money flows with the article and with the author. So that is the real objective behind the transformative agreements. So we view Plan S as an opportunity for research institutions to join and align with the funding community that's wanting to remove their support of hybrid publishing, which sits alongside subscriptions, and move toward funding of open access purely.
Thank you. Any comment?
Okay, thank you. Today I come from a small institution, a small new research institution. So we fully support open access because it's open access is a means of us to be more independent, because now if we want to access research publications, we depend on the university, which is our partner in our research projects. But open access is a means of small institutions like the one I'm coming from to be more independent. And also, in general, for young researchers, open science, open access, it's, I think, very important. So we fully support these plans of opening research. But one thing that I would like to point out, because my role in my institution is especially data management, I'm supporting researchers in the use of statistics and in the use of managing their data, but this Plan S doesn't address data, it's limited just on publication. So I would hope that also for research data, there will be some developments in this way, as is now happening for publications.
Well, bring you the publisher perspective on Plan S. First of all, I think Plan S just confirmed a direction of travel which was already taken by the Commission. It doesn't come as a surprise. Actually, Robert Smith has been talking to all publishers before coming to the plan, so we had conversation with him. And it's obvious that, as we have seen, in general, we have seen that when there was a mandate in open access, that has, of course, accelerated the uptake. So using the funding body angles to accelerate open access, it's an obvious move in that sense. Whether it will be successful, I think I have to echo some of Paul's comments. To start with, I think, it is still a small number of funders. We're talking about 11 funders. Some of the largest that we would have expected to be there, like DFG or the Swedish Research Council, so far are not part of it. But really, to really make it into a game changer, I think it's the global approach that is going to be really the key factor. Because again, the research output globally, a lot of the content comes from the US, comes from China, comes from other countries. We are still talking about a large 80% of content under subscription. So definitely Plan S, it's a good accelerator. But there are some question marks, because at the moment, it's 10 principles and aspirations, but many of the elements needs to be well defined. To start with, we're capping the APCs, so there is not a measurement there yet. And what does it mean? Okay, definitely, we do expect, so the top segment type of journals, like Lancet, Science, Cell Press, Nature, being out of the equation. But does that also pose a question about, do we still need to guarantee that we are addressing quality journals? So lowering and capping content, capping the APCs does give more leverage to also new type of application outlets, some very good, some really doubtful. So the quality, it's an element. I had a conversation with the representative of the Research European Association, and researchers are not so thrilled about the fact that the hybrid has been removed. I think, indeed, everybody would have expected the hybrid to have more of a role in the transformation, but hybrid has definitely played a good part on it, but it is slower than expected. But again, that is a reflection of the market, so it's about researchers' behavior, where they're publishing and how much are they actually use the opportunity to publish open access with hybrid. So from the researcher's perspective, not having hybrids, I mean, if you look at what was the first point in Colleen's slide about what researchers want, they want to publish in the favorite journal. So there is a subset of researchers funded by these 11 organizations and now won't be able to publish within those journals and neither the top ranking type of journal. So there is a question about, if we want really this to become an opportunity to, of course, hopefully there is going to be more funding bodies on board. And second, I think the global view, it's absolutely important. And then there is a question, of course, that was raised in the context of Germany about, the academic freedom. So I would be interested to hear not only what's the publisher perspective, but also what is the researcher perspective into this. And yeah, looking forward to see what are the next developments, because as I said, I think there are 10 aspirations and goals, but there is still quite some details to be carved out. Also, for instance, in defining what are, the platforms, or there is a vague notion of giving funds to create new open access outlets. So it's still to be seen how this is going to play, but definitely it is an accelerator and something that will expected to increase the output of open access.
Thank you.
Massimiliano.
Excuse me.
Hi. My point of view is obviously the point of view of not a researcher, not an academic employee, not a publisher. So I'm an external observer since years, and I know pretty well that open access is not in favor of hybrid journals. So there is no news, there is no surprise, even if who is involved in the European organization. But for me, the two key points are, one has been already said, it's the time. It's an accelerator. It's the first time that they really fix a strict deadline that probably will not be met. Let's see. But the second key point is the accountability. It's the first time, according to me, that I see not a generic European Council, but I see 11 names of institutions. And I'm pretty sure that, for instance, in Italy, the National Institute of Physics should have to do something to at least reply to someone else that in 2 years since now, or 3 years since now, will ask them which are the results of this plan, of this coalition. So it's the first time that I see the name, not anymore European something that, we have had a lot of announcements with respect to open access. So I think that there will be some possibilities. And by the way, now talking to Italy, even the choice of an INFN, it seems to be a very good and strategic choice for the achievement of the results, because it's not for sure the main research agency in Italy. Is a research agency, it's not a funding agency, meaning that's, okay, they fund obviously the research projects. But what is good, it's obviously the Institute of Nuclear Physics, so it's obviously only involved in physics, that we all know it's probably the most sensitive, or in any case, the area closer, if you want, to the open access, the archive stuff, and whatever you want to. So I'm quite, interested in see if effectively they will have success. On my personal side, this is not clear, but it's something I cross my finger for that.
Thank you. Sure. Luka and Dunja, here's that. I'm sorry, we have just one question.
Okay, yeah. I wish to point to Slovenian scientific journals. I know that this is a drop in the world scientific production, but the situation in Slovenia is so that we can achieve the requirement of Plan S in this field, because they are already free accessible through Digital Library of Slovenia. And they are free accessible immediately or with maximum €1 embargo. And I wish to mention that now in September our research agency will launch the grant for financing the Slovenian scientific journals, and we will see if they will include some requests in the context of Plan S.
I have mixed feelings about Plan S, but first of all, it's very early to talk about that, because the principles have not yet been qualified. They're just a collection of principles for now. It's also quite hard to add anything to what Paul said. He described the situation perfectly. But from a researcher perspective, I'm a bit afraid that, let's say, 10 years from now, it may come to pass that we will evaluate our research output, and that we will notice that in the years 21 to 25, our quality fell as a direct consequence of Plan S. Unless Plan S is implemented with a lot of feeling for the needs of the researchers. And I think we're forgetting something here. Plan S is a welcome kick for as others said, for the open access movement. But the scientific publishing has grown, scientific communication has grown organically for 350 years. There's a symbiosis in place between researchers and publishers. And we need to build on that, and we need to change that in order to achieve the goals of open access. We should not tear it apart, tear it down. We should adapt, we should proceed slowly, we should see what is acceptable for both actors in this process. And then we should use the principles the founders of open access ascribe to in a way that will not jeopardize the process of scientific communication and the whole research process. It is supposed to enable and to bring the research closer to the public. But if one of the results is that a part of researchers as a result of Plan S is suddenly in a worse position than the rest of the world, then that is certainly not what we want to achieve. So I think we should proceed with caution because the potential for disaster is very big. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's the first round. Is there any, yeah, please, Colleen, additional comment? Yeah, just please go ahead.
We're not flying anybody. No, I wanted to say that your points are quite valid, and I think, at least from the OA 2020 perspective, what we're talking about when we talk about open access is the business model. We're not talking about scholarly communication. It's the business model that needs to change, first of all, to liberate research, the business model underlying it. We're not saying that publishers need to go out of business. We're not saying, some might want that, but I think there will be a natural evolution in scholarly communications, but the key to that is the business model, the subscription business model, which is the problem. It's not the journal, it's not the publisher, it's the system that is based on the print era. Okay, the subscription model as such is what is holding back science because of its use and reuse restrictions. And we have digital technology today. We could do so much with the research results that are there if it was opened up. And so continuing with a system that was based on print just has no place in society today, in research today.
I have one question, additional question on all this. Luka, do you want to answer? Or?
Yes.
Okay, then please. Because I see your face, I know you. I know you. Very good.
Yes. Yes, the subscription model needs to change, but it needs to change in a way that will, because the publishers provide a service which is called validation of research, and that service needs to be either provided with the publishers or somebody else needs to take that role. So that is the part we may be forgetting a bit. I agree, the subscription model is outdated. We should go more to the article-based models, both in paying for the research and in the evaluation of research. But we should do this in cooperation with our partners, which are the publishers. That's all but yes, subscriptions are outdated, yes.
Thank you.
Any question from the audience? Not for now. I listed our questions in our Slido, today's Slido event. And there is one interesting question. I tried to join a few questions in one. And one of very important and very interesting questions is how do Plan S influence on traditionally subscription models? Now, I will say my question will be maybe more wider. Now we are talking about Plan S. We are talking about those basic principles. One of the most important, hybrid yes/no, gold only. There is any very clear decision about green. I have to mention Peter Zuber's concerns about green. Green is not open access, open publication concept anymore, but only preservation of preprints. in this, so this is very unclear, but what I want to say is there is always money in behind. And frankly to say, I'm concerned about the budget for Plan S, for example, here in Slovenia, okay. But there is one additional, another project which is running which will be run very fast, and it is 9th framework program. And those basic principles of Plan S, that hybrids will not be supported as eligible cost from the grant, should be maybe interesting to discuss here, because this is supported by budget. There will be certain billions for European researchers, and my question is to all of you, maybe for publishers and also from different perspectives for all others, what changes could be expected in the next few years regarding to all those expectations? For example, if this FP9 rule will be accepted, how do, for example, big deals look in the future, and how publishers will react? Does it possible maybe that publishers flip a certain amount of titles, simply flip to the gold? Or, I don't know, I just speculate. This is my question to you, please. Maybe I start with Dunja and then, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
We will see what happened. But requests will be here. And if you say 9th frame research program will have new challenges for us, for researchers and for the publishers, how to adopt to new requests. So, Luka.
Yeah. I think a lot depends on the consequences of the non-compliance on the Horizon 2020 projects. Mm-hmm. If the consequences will be taken, then the whole 9th program will be looked at differently, and the researchers will think twice about breaking the open access mandate. As for the models, of course the flip would be, from the point of researchers, the ideal solution. And, but it takes a little faith on the side of the publishers to suddenly go from guaranteed revenue at the beginning of the year to the revenue that's spread through the year and not guaranteed in advance, depending on the number. And once you tie the revenue to the number of the articles, the quality of the article will fall because more articles will get accepted to get the better revenue and so on. So there it's really a very hard question. Hard to see what will happen, but I do hope for changes to the subscription model.
Well, again, it's a very interesting mixed environment at the moment, and indeed we are talking about basically transforming a business model. To the question of flipping titles, at the moment, when 80% of the content published and constantly increasing year on year on around 4%, it's still, it's not open access. Well, flipping per se is just not a viable solution. And we also had some experiments where we flipped journals. And we did it where we saw that there was enough funds behind that specific research community, and there was a commitment to open access. So in some cases, it did work well. But we had also journals that we flipped to open access and flipped back because there was just not enough funds. So it's about sustainability of those journals. All these general movements we are seeing, so Plan S, but also Horizon Europe. If I'm not mistaken, with Horizon Europe also, so hybrid is not eligible, funds are not granted for that, but you can still publish with hybrid. So you raise a good question. So is there enough funds? And even within planners, there needs to be some clarity, because it says it's even the funding body or the institution. So it's all about indeed the availability of funds, and those discussions that we are having, those negotiations you have seen, like for instance in Germany recently, we've been discussing for 18 months, and it's easy to throw a title on the web, on a media saying Elsevier block open access. No, because really it's been 18 months of negotiation where we have kept access free even if the contract was finished. It's just really to try to find solutions, because the request of deal is basically pay for what you publish. But at the moment, again, because it's not a global move to gold open access, but US, it's with colors, it's mainly green. China is green. Japan also is into colors now, and they have a green solution. Then let's not forget the southern part of Europe. So again, we are with first movers where the discussions are particularly difficult, because we are trying to find solutions. And we came up with solutions which have not been yet what Germany, for instance, wants, but we did find a solution with Finland last year. We did come to an agreement with the Netherlands to support specific area and open access that were linked to their government agenda. So it's a bit of a pity to portray this terrible publisher as not thinking along solutions, but you can understand it's also that till we see that there is such a large portion of the globe that is still not putting funds for gold open access, but clearly saying to us, can you help us with green open access? Then the conversation remains pretty difficult. I know that Robert Ian Smith now is having also conversation with funding bodies in the US. So possibly a global approach, a more coordinated global approach, we really see some very effective changes. We have recently had a negotiation with, for instance, in Italy, and there was no transformative agreement requested there, for instance. So it's just that the scenario is very mixed at the moment, and I echo what Luka says, which is, yes, let's see, it's a focus, the focus has to be on the change of the business model for the many reasons why we want this transformation, but let's not underestimate the value the publisher adds and the competencies and the skills that are behind that. So what will be the future? Well, very hard to say. At the moment, I still see a mixed business model type of economy with some very strong leader in pushing open access, some country with very interesting national plans and strategies, and those are the countries where we actually are more convinced, and we are having conversation because they really have a vision of where they want to be. But they are the first movers, so it's difficult to fully support the vision, which is what we want to do, but making sure that they need to understand that there's still the 80% that it's not under the open access model. I don't know, Paul, if you want to say.
Okay. Well, I think the purpose, if I've understood it correctly, excuse me, I think the purpose of the Commission's support for Plan S and the reason that Science Europe has taken up Plan S is that they do want to change the business model, as Colleen has emphasised. The introduction of hybrid ABC payments, which we've experimented with probably more than any other country in Europe, in the UK, as a result of the Finch review, was designed to act as a transition for publishers to move from subscription publishing to a different business model centred on OA. On the whole, that hasn't worked. The analysis that we've undertaken through JISC, I chair the relevant JISC committee, the work that we've done in analysing the results of hybrid APC payments over X number of years in the UK is that it hasn't led to these offsetting deals to read and publish deals in the majority of cases. So the perception is that hybrid publishing doesn't lead to OA, and that's the reasoning, I think, behind the Commission statement that hybrid is no longer compliant with OA requirements, and which is why it will not be valid as a form of publication under any Commission programme or European Research Council programme. Going forward then, what does the future look like? Well, I come back to I think what I said at the start, that unless the whole world moves in the direction of Plan S, and that's a big ask, unless it does, you are going to have a very mixed situation where in Europe, publishers are being asked to provide pure open access models, whereas in the rest of the world, they will still want subscription models unless they change. And Europe will want to read the subscription content because we can't do research unless we see everything. So unless everybody moves, it's a challenge to see how Plan S will deliver a global change. I personally believe that a global change is possible and that it is feasible, but it's a big move from where we are now to where we need to get to for that to happen.
Can I just say one thing? No, I just wanted to make a comment on the hybrid, because indeed, starting from UK and other countries where we had some good collaboration and tried to support, I mean, we have agreement with funding bodies, so the fact that now Plan S requests funders to be more on the front line, it's absolutely fine. We already have agreement with a lot of funding bodies in that sense. But what you've seen is that, indeed, hybrid was expected to be the transitional format, let's say, and that does not happen. But again, we need to ask why, because in reality, I talked to a lot of universities where they had funds and they had voucher and researchers could take that up, and they didn't. There was, in a lot of university, an usage of the opportunity there to publish open access. Many researchers just didn't take it. So you can look into, okay, did university really enforce open access? I mean, to what extent they advocate for that internally? I mean, really, I really have been confronted with university where there was a pot for open access, and it was not really so much used as I expected. So I think you are talking also about the researchers and how researchers are behaving on what they want. Plan S is way more, well, it's imposing what's the road to follow. So, but because we have seen this, I wouldn't just, say, okay, hybrid didn't work because whatever. No, it does say something about market dynamics. It does say something about the research uptake. So I wouldn't disregard it as an option, but look into how to make that the uptake higher. Also because if you look then, in general, a lot of researchers, when they choose open access, many go to hybrid for the simple reason we said before. It's the type of journal they like, they know it, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So I agree with previous speakers that it's also very important what will happen globally, because research is not happening only in Europe, but on continents. And it's hard to predict what will happen in the future, but I think that for the realization of this plan, it's also really important to invest in the awareness among researchers and in their training. Eurodoc last year did a survey among early career researchers that showed that many researchers are not aware of open science, open access. They don't have the skills, the training, and especially they lack incentives. So apart from this, I think additional incentives are needed for researchers.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just continue to say the same thing in many different ways, but I think you've gotten the point. I mean, can we all agree that double dipping is not acceptable? Do we all have that perception? Okay, so I think we can move on from that point, period, yeah, full stop. Then, what can I add that's new that I haven't said before? Yes, open access also is global. There is no such thing as regional open access. That's a contradiction in itself. Open access is open access. I would say that, yes, we have early adopters. And they are the ones who are going through the toughest time right now. But they are, it's like as you build a tunnel, you know, you start and it's very hard at the beginning, but slowly as you bore through the mountain, it opens up a wider space, so it will be easier for those who follow to get through. That is the scenario that we are living in right now. And yes, Schmitz is going to be in the US next week talking to funders there, just like OA 2020 is a global initiative. In Berlin, we will see US representatives, Asian representatives, and I hope, yes, every geographical and disciplinary context represented, because it's time for alignment and it's time to move forward.
And now, I would like to come back to the real first question, to the economic perspective. When we deal with money, I have some very few ideas, but I'm sure that the European community itself doesn't want to jeopardize one of the main businesses. If you think deeply, the big three are three European publishers. We are not the most important probably area of the world in terms of publishing or publications, but we have the most important publishers in the world. And I don't think, even considering the lobbying of all the big three, that they will jeopardize at the end the business. And no one wants to jeopardize the business of publishing. We are not dealing with the amount of money, because we haven't yet spoken about which is the amount of money that you consider, for instance, in your publish and read model, fair. I'm not talking about finding fair like fair, okay? Because we all have a sensibility respect to this. If you think deeply, we all pay, I don't pay because I haven't, but 1,000 euro for the iPhone X. And we all know that it is an overall payment for that kind of stuff, right? But we are able to guarantee to Apple these gates because we like it. Because we know exactly that it's a very big price for the stuff, probably that is made in China or somewhere else, right? What we don't like is this sort of, or at least this is a personal opinion, obviously, this sort of double dipping. Because Federica was mentioning Italy, I'm pretty sure, knowing since 10 years a lot of Italian researchers, that there is no communication at all, how Colleen was envisaging before, between researcher and who is managing the contracts. So at the end, the hybrid model, it's just a way for publishing to hidden costs, basically, of this model. Because they don't, I have never seen a report in which are the full amount of APC fees in one single Italian university that have made available. Have you seen? You are also in Italy? Mm-hmm. Maybe very few of them. But for sure, many of them, they don't have any idea which is the cost behind that. And researchers do not communicate who is then elaborating the contract or negotiating the contract. It's the only stuff that I really think it's not acceptable. So we are not talking about an economic threshold and some gain that surely they need to have. But we are dealing against the fact that basically some of this information are hidden, basically hidden. This is
I just want to close that. That's exactly right. I mean, as we said before, time of transition, it's difficult, it's scary. Then let's look at what we can stand on. Let's stand on the numbers. Let's stand on the data. You actually are paying, because your tax dollars in Italy are paying $5,000 for access to a subscription at Italian universities. So when you look at that and you compare the costs of publishing, which are much less, leading to publisher profits of 30 and 40%, then let's stand on these data and think about what could we do with that 30 and 40% profit margin. Maybe we could invest in more, take some of that away and invest more in some publishing platforms from our own universities or other models.
Yes. I have frankly to say, I'm struggling because I have so many comments and replicas and dilemmas, but I'm not in position that but I have one comment about transition. Do you allow me? Although I'm chair of this round table. I think that transition to open science will take as long as hybrids will exist. And hybrids will exist as long as publishers will decide. This is my personal view on this. But if not, please, what is maybe, if Federica, can I ask you, what is maybe the solution regarding this question? How long the transition will take? From the perspective of you cannot answer, yeah, I know, yeah. But
no, again, really, I think for us as a publisher, it's a business model. So if everybody tomorrow decides we all want gold, they all will get gold, of course. I mean, so it's really market dynamics. It's really what researchers want. It's really about how much institution wants their researchers to go for open access. So I don't think it's even publishers saying, you know, for how long we want to maintain the subscription. No, because you see, I mean, at the end is the user, is the customer that are deciding what type of model. But this is, at the end, I mean, a full gold open access model will also be costly. Let's not forget that. I mean, even the president of DFG, not signing the plan, has made the comment about also what is, at the moment, what would be the cost for DFG to move into that full gold open access in the current circumstances where there is a mixed model. So again, it's not us clinging on the subscription model, it's just really different market dynamics, and there is no full alignment globally on what different academic parts of the world wants.
Okay, thanks.
There is a
question.
Should I?
Have one question, please? Is it possible that...
No, just wait, please.
Hello, just one question. Is it possible that if we already pay for subscription, that there is no APC for hybrid publishing? For example, for Xavier?
What do you mean? So if you're publishing as a...
We're already paying for subscriptions for the journal, and if a researcher wants to publish in that particular journal, is it possible for them to not have APC?
If it's so, no, it doesn't really work like that. If it's
I know, but we libraries put a lot of money and fundings or already for subscriptions.
Yes, but we are really talking about the two different things. You're paying subscription to access content which is published from university, and you're paying APC to publish under the open access model. So it's
but
different.
maybe discounted price or something.
Without going into the details, but a lot of this transformation agreement negotiation do consider that and facilitate that.
But this is kind of a double dipping that we are talking about. No?
No. First of all, I disagree. Second of all, I mean, as I said, a lot of the negotiations happening nowadays are actually built and constructed in that way. So there is a subscription element, there is an open access element, and in line with what is the vision and the strategy of the country, we are also looking into what is the model that, well, you're talking about discount, but there is always a way that we support open access. And about the double dipping, really, it's two streams, and within Elsevier, at least they are really dealt into different ways in terms of payments. And every year there is a recalculation of what is the cost of each journals, where we take in consideration how many articles within the journal have been published open access, and what's the percentage subscription. Mind you, almost everybody keeps to forget that also the subscription content is continuing to grow. So if you have journals where, you know, it's mainly subscription content, which has been growing, and you get like, you know, I don't know, 5 open access articles, you don't really see the difference in there. But I can tell you, we have we have reduced the prices, for instance, in 2018 for 12 titles where the open access content was growing a lot. And we have 100 titles where there was equal growth in subscription and open access articles, so they didn't change any price. So again, and there is a full list of APCs on our websites, so you can always check.
Thank you.
The Finland agreement that was mentioned a few times is giving 50% reduction on APCs for Finnish researchers. But I don't know the other details, what they had to agree to, but they went halfway there.
No, yeah, I didn't want to point out any country. Thanks for doing it. I mean, now it's public knowledge, but that's a good example of Finland, yeah.
I think, though, that lobbying for a discount on APCs would actually be short-sighted if we are looking to achieve transformation, because that is still leaving the cost of subscriptions and the subscription business model in place. It's not really having any transformative effect. So you could do that because, in a sense, it is taking some money out of the system right now. You're reducing the double dipping concept, but it's not transformative. So I think a country or a library, an institution, you disagree, needs to think about what their ambitions are. Do you want to achieve open access because you will have your research will have greater impact in the world? Do you want to do you want to work towards something that will enable your researchers to have access to everything? Or are you just going to, negotiate bit by bit and still be completely under the subscription system, which is not transparent, by the way. We have to remember that. What you pay for a subscription and what any other library in the world pays for a subscription is based on your print expenditures historically, right? There is no grounding for the amount of money that we are putting on the table for subscriptions. So you need to think about the longer term goals of your negotiations, I think.
Excuse me. No, just want to point, okay, I guess Finland, it's a good case, a good scenario, because the reason why we have agreed eventually to the fees, to the discount, because that's not per se that, okay, we have a negotiation here, discount, so we are all happy, and that was not the case. Finland has a good open science strategy on national level. The ATT initiative have been around for about 4 years, it's just concluded. So this conversation was a way more profound conversation about, what is their vision of open access, what they want to achieve, how can we help them achieve, and by giving the discount, how can we incentivize also financially the institution to really go for open access and review at the end whether we have helped accelerating open access. So I disagree, it doesn't help the transformation because the discussion there have been done in that type of context. How can we help you accelerate in what you want to achieve? Same in the Netherlands, where there were 6 or 7 specific research areas which were pinpointed by the ministry, and those were the area where they want to grow in general, where their really focus is in terms of research objective. And that's the area where we made agreements around open access, because again, there was a clear strategy on what they want to achieve. So these conversations are on a financial level, but there is also a common long-term planning to help them achieve what they want to achieve as part of a strategy which is clear and outlined.
Any question? No, it's not. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think you mentioned that you're very supportive for institutions and researchers to archive research data on your platform. I would like to ask you what is the cost of these platforms and of these services?
What you mean about the data part?
Yes.
Yeah, data archive. Well, I mean, as I said, it's a modular system, and there are different options depending on which modules an institution is interested. I won't disclose what the price is, and by the way, it's a starting model, so I know also that there was, as usual, there is a starting offer for institutions that want to try the modules, but in general, it has to do also with, how many data sets are you gonna basically generate? So what is the forecasting in terms of number of data sets, researchers, institutions that are part of the RDM systems? So it's a matrix, and it's something absolutely, that you can have a conversation with the people doing RDM for Elsevier, and they will give you an overview.
I'm asking that because I think it's rather peculiar that you're willing to accept data sets from the institutions, but these data sets served as the platform, as the basics for the publications that are published in your journals. and you are not willing to transform your journals to gold model.
I think
these two policies are not very good aligned.
No, I mean, we are talking about making data openly available. I mean, data so far in any publication, they were part as they were considered supplementary materials, and this is, I'm talking about, you know, probably till a couple of years ago, you would submit your data as part of supplementary materials. Now, the intention is to make data a proper object in scholarly communication, so it's an open data object, and that can live even without the support of publication, can just be published as a data per se.
Yeah, this is true, but anyway, we talk many times about publications that are linked with data.
Yes.
So I think that it's more usual now that these are data.
And absolutely, and we give option. And we give options. So data will be always open on our platform. So data are open, and it's, again, an author choice. If the author wants to make the paper open, there are opportunities with all the journals to make the paper open in open access modality. I think that's also part of the, you know, it's again, it's an author choice. I think what we are at the end of the day service providers. So we can argue what is the best model, but bottom line, we are service providers. So we offer authors a service which is in the data space, and we offer authors the possibility to choose whether they want to publish the article as a subscription article and do it open as a green open access options, or if they want to publish it as open access in hybrid or in a gold open access journal.
Yes, but you also mentioned that you cannot go to this flip because your journals are very high impact factors and so on. But you also mentioned Lancet and Nature journals. They support green open access, so it's not the argument that you could output.
I kind of missed the point here, to be honest.
Offer 6 months embargo for the journal okay.
So what is specifically your question?
It relates to your non-flipping willingness.
Okay.
Yes. Because you said that your journals are very valued regarding impact factors.
Okay, I never said my journals are good regarding impact factor, but I think I gave an explanation why flipping it's simply not so something that you would just do from one moment to the other, and there are considerations about, you know, what the community wants from a specific journal, what type of funding that is behind the specific journal, and again, I tried to highlight that you should have a global overview about the fact that also still a lot of countries are still asking us to continue with the one green open access, which is basically based on the subscription. And then something, I'm not saying separate, our services on open data, those are something that, yes, you can see as complementary with articles, but again, I would really look at place as a service provider who is offering different choices to their authors. And if you want, as a researcher, to make data available, wonderful. I think this is, it's really the way to go. And we offer opportunities to do that, just simply to, you know, make it as a data attached to a paper, or publish as a data object itself in a data article or data journal, or decide even only, you know, to circulate the data within your repository using existing infrastructure of the university or the modules that we are providing, and then depending on the researcher choice, make it available online, or give it a restricted access, because that's also what you can do and decide to share with your collaborators.
Ayris, please.
Anybody else?
I have just a very short question for the panel. And I'll formulate the question under a note and a consideration. A note is that I've noticed that the two most popular questions on Slido are about two other elements of open science, which is the evaluation system and citizen science, both listed as pillars of open science. This is the note. The consideration is that I think, this is a personal consideration, an obstacle for achieving a better open access results is precisely by treating open access as an isolated element in the context of open science. So the question to the panel is, if the panel, alongside the audience, of course, consider is useful to discuss in this panel also other elements of open science, like at least the two questions suggest here.
Okay.
I don't want to, if the audience is only interested in open access,
Yes.
I don't want to, please reject the question. So the question is to panel and the group if
No, yes, I agree.
in a broader
I mean,
context, maybe it helps open access itself.
Yeah. Yes. I just have one question regarding this issue, and then we step to maybe a step forward. Just for Colleen, please, if possible, about DEAL project. Now, DEAL project is asleep, I will say, or it is dead, I don't know. Do you plan regarding FP9 and regarding those last things as a plan S? Do you plan some new approach for negotiation, for new targets, new goals?
I would say deal is not, deal is quiet right now because there are ongoing negotiations. And I don't think there is anything new to be said. It has very clear objectives and it is staying on track to achieve those objectives. So that's all I can really say. That's all the information I have, and I think that's actually all there is to be said about those negotiations.
Okay, thank you. Yes, now, as mentioned, we have many, yeah, I'm sorry, please.
Sorry for being intrusive. If we imagine in Slovenia that you have something similar with DEAL and you make some savings, DEAL is currently doing how much? 32 million euro savings, I think, which are not invested back in other elements of open science. Mm-hmm. If Slovenia would do, presumably, the same thing and will make, let's say, 2 million euro savings, is Slovenia prepared to use these 2 million euros to invest back in the system in other elements of open science, or will simply be paused, if not lost?
This is absolutely good question. I'm not in charge to do decision, but I think so that this is the right way. I mean, I have maybe more radical ideas about savings in the field of subscriptions. I would back to researchers. However, I'm not able to answer, but maybe if the panelists have some ideas about allocation, yeah, savings.
I can tell you what would happen if currently we have some special funds allocated for subscriptions. It's part of the science budget, and if subscriptions were not needed anymore, that would go back to the science budget, the general science budget, which probably means projects. Unless, of course, there was political will in the ministry to allocate some funds to open science. But that is not, that could happen even in the subscription model. And those 2 million are not, or whatever it is, 3 and a bit, are not really tied directly to funds for open science. There is no direct connection that I can see. And open science could get funds regardless of whether subscriptions remain. So, no. But about the evaluation model, again, I don't think it's tied to the to a change in publishing models. It should be tied to a change what Paul has been preaching to these 2 days. Sorry for the word, Paul. We should move from evaluating journals to evaluating articles. And this is the basic principle. And if you accept this principle, then you see that this has nothing to do with publishing models. Because if a journal is gold, hybrid, so on, it doesn't matter. Because when you are evaluating articles, you don't care where the article was published. You just care what was the impact of the article. And if you move to that evaluation model, the role of the journalist remains just the confirmation to your fellow peers that this research was well done. If it's published in a good journal, there's a chance it was good research. If it's published on a blog, why was it not published in a journal? So we should remove the journal impact factors from the evaluation process, certainly. But this need not be tied to a change in the publishing model. That's my opinion.
Okay. Luka opened next very important issue, evaluation system. And the most high-ranked question today is how to change evaluation system to align them with change publication models. I would say with open science principles. And this is question for all panel. I would like, before we start, I would like just to ask, we have one senior, not researcher, only researcher, but also one of the most influential and important people in the field of open science. We have young researchers, we have publishers, we have both of publishers which supports evaluation system, information systems, Scopus Web of Science. We have a huge research institute, we have Slovenian Institute. So what is your view on, especially in the light of those very new and very, I would say, very attractive and important initiative like DORA, Leiden Manifesto, DORA San Francisco, probably you know, from impact factor level to article level, etc., etc. What do you think about and how do you see in this? Please, if Anna maybe start or Paul, I don't know. Just please go ahead.
Okay, can I start? Okay, so about evaluation systems, I'm a statistician, so in my work numbers are very important, but sometimes numbers don't tell the full story, so it's also useful to have some more qualitative approach when evaluating somebody's work. But what I want to point out here about the evaluation systems is that research output from researchers is not just journal articles, is also other kind of output, like also research data sets. Sometimes even more work is involved in producing good quality research. So I think these evaluation systems, when the researchers are being evaluated, it should take in account many dimensions, and I think changes are needed, and I see that these changes are also somehow aligned with the publishing models, but it's hard to say it so much in detail. But yes, it's, as I mentioned previously, it's really important to find incentives for researchers to do open science, so changes in evaluation systems are very much related to that. Wants to go next?
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of comments. I think one is about really incentives, and the other then is about evaluation, because I think the two are interlinked. So in the presentation this morning, I talked a little bit about what we are doing in my university to change the incentive and reward system to be aligned with open science. And I talked about the reform of the academic promotions framework, the UCL academic promotions framework, which we did a year ago, which took about a year to consult on with academic colleagues and to change their perception of points they could make in their applications for a promotion or a pay rise. It's true that the revised version of the academic promotions framework doesn't explicitly recommend or mandate one particular form of publication. So it doesn't say you will not publish in subscription journals, you will publish in gold open access journals. I could have asked for it to say that. I didn't say that. That isn't, absolutely not in the promotions framework. The approach we've taken, because we thought this was the approach that would work, and indeed it has worked, is that we present the researcher with a list of options, and we include in that list of options a number of options which are absolutely specifically aligned to open science, because we are in a transition. Not everybody will transition to an open science approach straight away, so you have to cater in a university. In transition, you have to cater for a range of options from different researchers, some who want to publish in subscription journals, as long as subscription journals exist, and those who don't want to do that, who want to opt for an open science route. And so the rewards and incentive scheme does promote openness. And we suggest criteria by which openness can be shown and demonstrated. And that's a way of getting academics involved in new ways of thinking and new ways of working, because the incentive scheme, the reward scheme, absolutely recognizes they're sharing their data, they're making their publications open, they've shared their open source software. But it's not mandated, but they are options. Then the second part is about evaluation. How do you evaluate excellence in an open science environment? Well, if you've signed up to Plan S, if your research funder has signed up to Plan S, there are certain things that you will need to do which are implicit but not explicit in Plan S. One is that you will have to change your promotions and reward criteria in your universities. And this was the point that Jean Chambaz, who is the rector of the Sorbonne, made to me when he read Plan S. He said to me, well, isn't it implicit then that we'll need to change our promotion and evaluation frameworks to take account of openness, because traditional routes, that is publishing in high impact factor subscription journals, will no longer be valid. And that's perfectly true, that once you've signed up to Plan S, you are going to have to change your promotion frameworks as well. How do you evaluate openness, excellence in an open science environment? Well, it's not explicit in Plan S, but it is implicit that you have to align yourself with the principles in the San Francisco Declaration, the DORA principles, which do not allow the use of impact factors as a surrogate, a numerical surrogate for quality in individual articles. So my university has signed DORA, and our national research evaluation framework, the REF, absolutely does not allow journal impact factors to be used in assessment by the panels that are assessing the submitted. Every researcher who submits to the REF has to submit 4 outputs. They could be articles or books or software that the researchers developed, or a mixture of all those things. But you're not allowed, the chairs of panels confirm, you're not allowed to use journal impact factors to say, this is a good piece of work because it appears in a journal with this impact factor. That's absolutely verboten. You're not allowed to say that. It doesn't mean anything in a REF context. So what we are doing in my university is to bring that operationalization of DORA back into the institution by using it, or recommending, because we haven't written our bibliometrics policy yet, or we have drafted it, it hasn't been signed off yet, that we adopt the same approach institutionally, that you don't use, you don't equate academic quality with simple numerical values in either the promotions process, the annual evaluation process, or in the appointments process when you're appointing to a post in UCL in the first place. So once you've signed up to Plan S, you're actually implicitly going to have to do all these things, because otherwise you can't deliver Plan S. because Plan S is pulling you in this direction, and your traditional frameworks for promotion and evaluation are pulling you in that direction over there. So although they're not explicit in the principles in Plan S, they are implicit in when you operationalize it. You're going to have to do these things in order to deliver what the objectives of Plan S actually say, and that's what we're trying to do in my university without Plan S, because we started these things without Plan S being known to us. This is the direction that we are trying to take. And as I say, in promotions it has worked and was not in the least bit controversial, to my surprise, because I thought it would be, but it wasn't. It was actually quite a straightforward thing to do for promotions, and I expect the same thing for appointments and for the annual appraisal round, where individual researchers, and me too, are evaluated. Bibliometrics, we're still out for consultation on that, and I think that is going to be a challenge, because the current system is so embedded in academic culture that it will take a little while to convince people of the benefits of doing it differently. Who else?
Thank you.
Sorry?
You said what you are not allowed to use, but what do you use?
For what? Sorry.
For evaluation.
Oh, well, the recommendation of the draft policy is a mixture of reading the article and making an informed judgment based on your understanding of the original article. We would not expect to read all the individual articles that a researcher has produced, because in many, not in history necessarily, my own subject, but in physical sciences or biomedical sciences, there would be so much material you couldn't be possibly expected to read it all. And I think the agreed approach, which I think we'll adopt in the policy that we send out to consultation, is that we invite the academic to submit 4 or 5 pieces that they want us to read. So we are going to read things, but not the whole range of work. I think that's a legitimate thing to do. We will use some numerical bibliometric indicators, not the journal impact factor. Things like downloads for online material, or maybe field-weighted citations in those select areas where citations are important. Again, in history, they're not important at all. But only as a support for the academic judgment that you've made by reading the actual article. And we feel that will move the evaluation system on into the direction of open science and give us a sounder base on which to base our evaluation activities.
So primarily it's the referee's judgment based on their reading of the submitted material.
That seems to be the position that is coming through in our consultations with the 11 faculties as the approach they want to take, yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, just really fully agree with, in general, the fact that one of the working groups at the Commission is about rewards, and this is really the next chapter, the one that they really need to dig in. It's really because by giving the right rewards, I think you will see that also the other elements of open science will actually be more implemented. And I'm talking specifically about also open data, but also the science society, citizen science, so those elements. It requires indeed a much more wider approach also to the metrics, and not only to one way of one metric. But I had also some conversation already with funding bodies that already started to consider to have also to evaluate also based on, for instance, what is the effort the researcher made to communicate science externally. And of course, these are all very important elements and are part of open science, but it's really difficult to really give a value. And so, yes, there is really good work that could be done in the field of rewards and connected with evaluation to be able to enable more open science elements to be really embedded in the current research workflow and communication, scholarly communication.
I wish to say only that I agree what Luka before said and others. It have to be something done with evaluation systems in Slovenia, and all of them that are based on impact factors. In my professional career, and also my colleague Bernarda, we were too many times asked where I have to publish that I will get more points. Our researchers are looking for the journals that are published their works, and their peers don't read these journals, but they are publishing because they are getting more points in these journals, and this is a pity. Something must happen on this side, and the metrics more concentrated focus on the articles, and more trust to peers when they are making reports of your value, scientific value, is also preferable in nowadays in this world.
I have one question for Dunja and also for Paul about university press. How do you organize peer review, and how do you avoid conflict of interest? Probably at UCL it's more simple because it's well-known branding, but at University of Ljubljana, University of Maribor, do you look peer reviews within university? Do you plan maybe some system? I don't know. Do you have to look it abroad? And do you have some tools for searching? For example, we use here in SRA, reviewer finder, expert lookup by Elsevier, I think. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we have different, at the moment we have different systems of peer review for our research monographs and for the new subject journal platform that we're launching in later in the autumn. So I'll briefly describe each of those. So for our research monographs, it's a rather traditional double-blind peer review where the author submits a proposal to us for a book, and we either accept the manuscript, or they either send the manuscript with the proposal, or they give a detailed breakdown of what the manuscript will look like in the proposal. And we select from a list of subject experts on our executive. We have a UCL Press executive, which I chair, which consists largely of academic colleagues from UCL, and they help us choose peer reviewers. There has to be at least one peer reviewer from outside UCL, and preferably from outside the UK, and probably one peer reviewer in the UK and possibly in UCL, though not necessarily. But there has to be at least one non-UCL reviewer in the list of people that we send the item to review. The reviews come back, and if both reviews agree, broadly speaking, then we would accept the manuscript or proposal, or we'd reject it if both reviewers panned it and said, this is not worth publishing. And both those things have happened in 3 years we've been publishing. If there's a split decision, which there often is, one peer reviewer will say it's very good, the other peer reviewer will say it's not good, I don't think you should take this further. I'd send it to a third peer reviewer for a decision, and I'd take the view of the third peer reviewer as to whether we'd accept or reject. And it will keep coming back to the academic executive board each time before we're all agreed on the process. For the journal platform that we're launching, the publishing platform, the open publishing platform for journals or journal-type literature, that we're launching in the autumn, we're taking a completely different approach. It will be open. It will be open peer review, and we're very keen to embed open peer review in the publishing platform. So there will be a preliminary review of the articles submitted by the editorial board, which will be chaired by an academic and other academics in that particular field, because these will be subject-based publishing platforms. And they will make an initial assessment based on the methodology that's been used and the process that's been followed and described in the paper. And if it passes that light touch peer review on process and methodology, we'll then send it, we'll publish it. That will be published as a green open access output in our repository. And we'll send it to 2 peer reviewers for the subject peer review. They'll report back. Their reports will be open and shared on the publishing platform. If it gets 2 green lights from the subject peer reviewers, we'll publish the article along with the peer reviews on the publishing platform to supplement the green version that went into the repository, and invite public peer review of the article after that, so readers can comment on the article once they've read it. So that's how we organise peer review in the press. For monographs, it's been astonishingly successful. For the journal platform, it's closely modelled, though not identical to the model that the Wellcome Trust has adopted for its open research platform. So we're going to trial that for a couple of years with our journal platform and see how that goes.
Thank
you. In our university press, the rules are different from type of document to another, because it depends if you are publish a textbook or manual, or this is professional or scientific book. In the field of scientific books, we have double peer review, double-blind peer review. One of them must be external peer review, but not external in the mean of foreign, because of Slovenian language, but external outside of the institution. And it should be with higher academic academic position as the author is. So this is the main rules. But Slovenian language is also the big limitation to by searching the peer reviews, and sometimes we don't accomplish all those rules we set it for ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Okay, please, just absolutely.
No, I'm not defending in factor at all. But I have several notes taken during this discussion. The first one is relating to the I don't care about publishing models in evaluation. I care about which is the researcher perspective and, the scholar attitude. And nowadays it's changing. This is basically now under our eyes. And we don't have anymore the research standard publication. And I mean research standard publication, I mean papers, books, chapters, proceedings, and stuff like that. We do have patents, something that we had never mentioned, but that it started to be important in the evaluation. But we don't have all the data about these patents now, because we also need economic data, and we also have data papers. By the way, just a marketing jingle also for me, we are producing since 3 or 4 years the data citation index, so 350 repositories that are on Web of Science, and we have started to index the data papers, so papers that are also published on the data journals since 2 or 3 years ago. Since now you can also have the link both in Web of Science, so you can have access to this. But which is the problem to evaluate this type of stuff? We have been mentioning several times today. They are not peer-reviewed, so data sets. They could not be complete. I mean, there are a lot of cases in which the data are not good at all. If you try to think also in the normal publishing area, the corrections, the retractions, the predatory publishing, it's growing everywhere, basically. You might think that even, and especially in that field, with no peer review at all, with a lack of control, if I may, it's very hard, to rely on such a data. So let's come back to the evaluation of papers. That probably is the stable stuff that we do have. And which are the way of evaluating papers? Well, I know just 2 or probably 3 of these. One is peer review, right? So the best way, and we all agree about that, would be having someone very expert in that matter, just reading all that paper and saying, oh, this is a very good paper or not. Apart from the fact that in Italy have some doubts about the fairness of this, because we are a particular country, for your information, for instance, we went through this way. So the first evaluation exercise in Italy, 2001, 2003, was a completely peer review exercise. ANVUR, the National Evaluation Agency, doesn't exist anymore, was managed by another organization, always ministry organizations, but it was completely peer review. And it happened around 2007, if I'm not wrong. So it was very much expensive and was very much time consuming, also to get all this feedback and so on. So we decided to move from that evaluation exercises, and far before the UK, we decided to go for some few papers selected by the single scholars in each institution, university research centers, to be evaluated, but not for the single person, by the way, for the institution to which they belong or the departments, okay? So we do evaluate not the single, but we do evaluate departments and institution. And how do we evaluate these papers that they submit? With the informed peer review. We decided to go both for peer review, 0.5% of these papers should be peer reviewed, and all the other 0.5% should be analyzed according to bibliometrics indicators. And here I come to the, to the point of indicators. Which indicators? Well, in Italy we are complying to the Leiden Manifesto, and personally speaking, we do not have any issue on that, even as Clarivate. I mean, just use more indicators, and we don't use just a single indicator. I will explain in a while. We do use contextualized indicators, there are no point for me, and and even for Clarivate, to say that Leiden Manifesto, the 10 principles, are good in terms of bibliometric application, let's say. But what about DORA, and what about journals? The National Evaluation Agency of Italy decided to use both a mixture and a very complicated algorithm, by the way, the article level metrics and the journal metrics. The article level metrics contextualized, let's say the field weight, if you want to use Scopus, the category normalized or something like that, if you want, or the percentiles if you want to use both. By the way, we are using both databases, so without choosing anything. So we can be evaluated, but we also mixed these with the journal metrics. Why they did this? And why it's important impact factor in this case? Impact factor is just one of the metrics. I cannot say that impact factor is better than all the other journal metrics that you might have heard. It has been maybe the first, so popular for this. It's simple, it's clear, it's nothing. But the same Eugene Garfield was saying since 20 years, since times in which bibliometrics was not so important, that should be wisely adopted, should we not use it for evaluating researchers or something like that. So for instance, in Italy, we are using it, but we are not evaluating researchers, we are evaluating institutions. And why this? Why we are using the impact factor? Because you need to also sometimes, not all the times, to reply to a question like, how this December 2017 paper looks like. If I tell you, how can you evaluate a December 2017 paper, or a June 2017 paper, or a 2017 paper? And provided that, like in Italy, you are not anymore in the condition to spend a lot of time and money in doing a peer review, that will be perfect, but basically will not give you the results today, will give you the results, especially for Italian times, in years probably. Which are the possibilities that you have? Rely on citations, like the article level metrics? No, because the paper is too young, right? So you don't have the statistical, power of the paper to say this paper would be very nice. This paper has been maybe very cited very few times. You want to rely on altmetrics? Download, likes, tweets, good luck. So the only way that you can maybe try to do something, it's try to rely on the journal metrics. So if you are able to publish on Nature, if you last year have published on Nature, well, it's not correct, it's not 100% correct, it's probably not 50% correct, but probably you are a good researcher, and we all know that. We all think about this because you managed to publish on Nature. We rely on the name of the journal, not the impact factor. The impact factor is just picturing what the researcher think about it. I've seen several Italian researchers having a party to have published it on whatever type of journals because they know that the journal is good for them. All the rankings, Shanghai ranking just released it, just asked it to all the researchers in all the panels, which are the top journals for them, independently from impact factor. Then maybe the list of the rankings tend to be quite similar because maybe it's just, you know, a word of mouth everywhere. But in the case, every one of you has an idea of which are the top journals. And you rely on the fact that that journal has accepted that paper, that they peer-reviewed, the reviewers have peer-reviewed that paper, and they have said, oh, this is a good paper that can be published on Nature, I say Nature. This is the real sense, the only sense in which even nowadays are used the journal matrix. As you use the impact factor, you can use whatever type of journal matrix. You can also choose one of the attempts of LCVs along the years, EPP, SNP, SJR, SiteScore. They have launched a lot of journal matrix basically against the impact factor. But the concept is always around that. Journal matrix could be very helpful if the paper is very recent, period. Unless you don't want to see, or you don't want to mention, or you don't want to evaluate papers with the tweets and likes and something like that. I personally don't want, and hopefully I'm in a country in which we have decided to not go, at least for the moment, on that road. So we are evaluating in such a way with, by the way, complicated algorithms, because journal metrics are much more important, much more the paper is recent. So ANGUR, our evaluation agency, did some calibration algorithm to waive, even and always low, the journal metrics when the paper is obviously older than 1 year or something like that. So this is just the reasons. I would not, I'm obviously in Clarivate, so everything that I say with the impact factor could be at least controversial, but I think that this is you know, the real sense behind the journal impact factor. Let me also say to you something, Miro, because this is another advertising jingle. We also have launched the Reviewer Connect, so you cannot also have a reviewer locator. It's based on the Publons platform, and the only issue, and the only feature, as usual, is that you cannot just find out reviewers of Elsevier journals, you can find out reviewers of any type of journals, or reviewers of that have put their profile on Publons. This is all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good news. And yeah, you mentioned research data. I would do maybe a step forward about, when I was announced as a moderator of this, as the chair of this roundtable, I've got some questions by my colleagues, researchers, about research data. And there were two of them, maybe. And here at Slido is also one of those questions. It's the last. Research data reuse and research ethical principles. My question is maybe for Anna, which is a young researcher, about those issues. First, how to trust some data without peer review and without, let's say, research context, and also about reuse. How is this in practice?
Yeah, well, open data is not enough that we can say we have open data if we just upload some data set online. I think it's very, very important to have some review process, but to not only that, like in social sciences, it's a lot of time the data can be very sensitive. It has personal information, so data needs to be cleaned. And there is a lot of work involved in the data preparation. And it's sometimes a very long process. Also, you know, there are these very big social surveys that after their data is not available right after data collection. It takes some time to do the quality processing. And also for individual researchers that would like to publish their data, I think we need still a lot of training and support for researchers, because it's not a very simple issue. And they need, at institutions, they should provide support in form of infrastructures and employees that would support researchers in the data management process. For example, that's one of the roles I have at my institution, to help to support researchers with data. But many institutions still don't have this kind of support established. But I think it's very important for assuring the quality of data, because without this, the data then it's not useful for other researchers for secondary use.
Oh, thank you. Any comment on this? Okay, then maybe the last issue of today, before we try to answer also some other questions, is citizen science. This is pretty new for Slovenia. Last year we had some speeches about, and citizen science. Yeah, this is really something very, very interesting for researchers, also for collaborative volunteers. And here are some questions. The second one at the list today: how important is citizen science for Slovenia? Maybe all panelists can do the answer. Maybe if I start, for example, with Luka. Luka is coming from the biggest and also regarding the quality from the top Slovenian Research Institute. How do you practice citizen science in your institute, and what do you think, how important is citizen science for your institute and also for your institution and also for science at all in Slovenia?
You found me, I know nothing about that. All I can say is our library is open, and we have some, what I would call citizen scientists coming and doing research in our library. And I'm glad they come, but I don't follow their, I can't say if they produce any science. I know we have some people that spend at least a day a week in our library doing research, and they are not employed anywhere. They are not scientists by profession and so on. I can't say I remember any instances of public citizen science making an impact in our research environment.
Maybe Paul can comment. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, excuse me.
Can comment how for example, how UCL is involved into citizen science project.
Yes, okay. So there are quite a large number of citizen science projects taking place in UCL. At the moment, they tend to be based in individual departments and faculties, and there isn't a pan-university approach to citizen science because the concept is so new, but individual academic colleagues in the departments and faculties have started citizen science activity. As I said in my talk this morning, we are hoping to appoint Professor Muki Hackley in UCL as the UCL coordinator for citizen science for the whole university, and he will use the library, and staff will employ in a citizen science office in the library to help him develop a joined-up citizen science approach across the university. My own library is involved in citizen science. We have one big citizen science project underway at the moment called the Bentham project. So my library has the archive of Jeremy Bentham, the 19th century utilitarian philosopher. The man who invented the word international, so that's one of his inventions in the early 19th century. And we're publishing his works. And there are thousands of manuscripts in a rather difficult 19th century hand. He had a pretty awful handwriting. And what we've done is crowdsource the transcription of the manuscripts by opening them up to readers on the web and inviting them to do initial transcripts of the boxes of archival material. And we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of transcriptions from members of the public who wanted to be involved in research activity in a university. So that is the definition of citizen science. It's where the citizen works alongside the researcher as an equal partner, and the researcher learns from the insights of the citizen because of their expertise or interest in a particular area. So these transcripts then go to an editorial committee where they're checked, and then they form part of the published work, because we include them in the published editions of the Bentham corpus that we're producing. And it's speeded up the publication of the collected works no end, because we've got so many more transcribers working on the archive. That's an example of how in an arts and humanities context a library can get involved in citizen science activity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think when we talk about citizen science nowadays, also there is a distinction to be made indeed. Example like this where really the citizen gets involved in doing research, and there are some really interesting projects. And unfortunately, when I talk with some of the organizers of this project, they always say it's great, everybody loves it, but the funding for long-term projects, most of the time they lack. But I think within citizen science, there is also a part of it which is really, in general, how to address science to citizens. So in this era of fake news, and there is a lot of concern about the value of science to society, so there is really a desire to get really the research to get closer to society. I was attending last week in Brussels a meeting organized on science in society by the Russell Group and the Guild, and the topic was really, so in the past with Horizon 2020, there was really a chapter on citizen science. So in Horizon Europe, how is that going to be part of it? And the plea was more coming from, for instance, the humanities and social sciences, so they could really play a role into that as part of the mission of Horizon Europe, really in helping when it comes to defining the societal challenges and evaluating the projects that address and what is the societal impact. And I think one interesting aspect also of science society, it's also how do we communicate. So there is a lot to be said about a lot of institutions really doing trainings on how to get researchers to be able to communicate their science and to do it in a responsible way. And with that, indeed, it's not about getting so many likes and then throwing news that are, but really being responsible in communicating your research outcome. I organized in July at ESOF a panel discussion with around 8 representatives from different countries, really to tell the stories, how they see science in society, in which way they do that. And it was interesting to see that there is a lot going around, but it's most of the time a lot of really individual initiatives, or there is not really a one approach to it. But it's clear that it does flag a need, and that's why it's also part of the Open Science Agenda, which is really the need to get research closer to society, to really understand, what's the value of research. And from our perspective in the Sevilla, very similarly, there are a lot of initiatives that are all scattered around, and most of the time it's really up to the one single within the company that says, oh, it would be great to do something with this group of, I don't know, there's a group of patients where we could do something about it, communicating science, or we have like I said, at ESOF, we put together a panel discussion on the topic. We have some specific access initiatives for specific groups. So there is a lot of ideas around, and specifically around science communication, as I made the example of the video slides. How can we really make sure that all the content, all the knowledge is also transferred to society at large? Because I think it's a little bit of a misconception to think that with open access, it's access to everybody, but I challenge a lot of citizens to take a paper I mean, I was a publisher for years in pharmacology, pharmaceutical sciences. I'm not, that is not my background. So I was really managing the portfolio. Yes, I get to know it. I mean, if you're an intelligent, clever person, whatever, but you are not going to read primarily that. I mean, what you need as a citizen, it's really that is translated in layman language. So I think there is a lot that can be done on that space. And I think as an example, we give free access to public libraries in some countries, UK for instance, but it's not so much use as you would like to see. So how do we reach, how can science can really be properly communicated to citizens so that they feel part of this enterprise and they know, I mean, what is, I mean, there are some big question marks. For instance, think about AI, artificial intelligence. You know, there are so many ethical questions around that. And I think that the public wants to be part of this debate. And so that's why I wanted to make the citizen science topic a bit larger than that and really understanding what is the drive to get into this topic as part of the open science agenda.
Yes, in our library we have the local history department, and this is the department I see as a potential for practicing citizen science. We are collecting all material about our city Maribor, also postcards, everything, ephemera and other books. We have the repository, extra repository for digitized versions of our rare books and other ephemera materials, and we plan in near future to practice citizen science in the manner of recognition of the persons on the postcards, locations of the city, events of the historical events and locations. Then we have a beautiful catalog of our journal, Marburger Zeitung. This is a historical journal because we are near the Austria and we are the common state in the past, and the catalog exists in the cards with beautiful handwriting but hard to read. It's the possibility to offer our citizen to help us to overtype these cards. We have many materials in the Gothics, and I think that this could be some small projects to practice citizen science in near future, if I understand the concept of citizen science well.
Any comments from the audience? Please.
Librarian. Maybe this transliteration is citizen librarianship, not citizen science.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, please allow me, before we close this roundtable, that we go through, list through Slido questions. We answered some questions, some of not, no. I suggest I comment those questions which I know for certain comments or answers. And maybe we can ask some panelists, some of panelists to comment. So, first, second, we try to answer. What about fundings and evaluations in Slovenia if researchers decided to support and publish just open access? I think pure open access, gold. I think that, yeah, we don't know, but probably now Plan S is signed, so we will see. We are pretty optimistic that this will be rewarded somehow, or that they will not be affected if they publish via evaluation system. What do you think about integrated university press organizing a dissemination platform for all Slovenian universities? Dunja, please.
This is a question for a rector conference.
Okay, perfect. Question, but basically you support this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, why not?
There were a couple of attempts of Ministry of Science and Education in Slovenia to establish a common national platform for scientific publications. Any news? Basically, we have OpenScience.se. This is, but there are some news. One very important is that National Bibliographic Center, ISU Maribor, will be involved into one huge project of data center, which will serve, which will be important, especially for research data deposit. I mean, this is absolutely very good news, and this will be realized through next framework, next European Commission financing framework. Deal roadmap systematically support hybrid publication. Is it in a conflict with Plan S? What do you think, Colleen?
Is it? I think I answered the question before. Yeah,
it was answered. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Then deal roadmap systematic. Okay, how to plan infra introduce we said. Libraries can produce savings by negotiation, better contracts. The biggest obstacle to use these savings for investing. We answered this. Why is percent of open articles in some countries so high, Bosnia, Croatia? My speculation is because they publish in them own titles which are basically gold. Is this okay, or do you have some comments, maybe, Massimiliano?
My comment is probably Slovenia is a more advanced research-focused country respect to the other two. So they tend to publish it not on the international journals like you. And so if they publish obviously on local regional journals, the nice probability to intercept our publication, open access publication. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's good for you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is good indicator, yeah.
But it means that you publish
Yeah. Yeah. We have one comment here. Luka, please.
A comment about the current state of open access we just heard. Because we are better researchers, we publish less in open access. We should think about that.
Yeah, okay. This is absolutely feasible. I mean, understandable. Why? Hybrid, yeah, those questions. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not in a contradiction. It's the fact that, as I said before, a researcher, in any case,
this is just a point to think about for the advocates of open access, about where we are at the moment.
Okay. And also we answer to one question we got through registration system. It is in Slovenian, so I will try to translate. If the system of APCs, so I think pure gold, is more sustainable than the system of subscriptions, why don't we implement it? It's a very simple question. I think, Federica, that the answer is very complicated.
Yeah, I think we already tried to answer in
many
forms and ways.
But okay, it's any problem. Yeah, we answer. And if not cheaper, why don't we implement? I mean, we answered this, but the huge gap between attitudes is existing. So I think that we have to, but this is not the question for this conference today. So is there any additional question by the audience right now? If not, yeah, please. Willy, please.
For Colleen, William Leban, University of Primorska. Do you believe the open access system is cheaper than subscription system? And if so, why do you believe so?
I think, well, we have some evidence because looking at OpenAPC, you can look at gold open access publishing charges, which are transparent. And we know from the white paper produced by MPDL, the cost involved per article is around $5,000 in the subscription system, and those data have never been challenged by any publisher or anyone, so that's recognized. So we see the discrepancy there. But I think perhaps even looking in the future, what is key here is the concept of competition. Because right now, in the subscription system, it's a lockbox. As I said before, we don't know what we are paying for subscriptions. Well, we know in our own institution, but we don't know in another institution, and that's all based on print expenditures. And the publishers right now don't compete with each other, right? It's not as if you say, well, Wiley and Springer, I'm going to cancel Wiley this year and go with Springer only, right? No, we can't do that. They have portfolios that are differentiated. And there is no competition in the subscription market. If we can get to a point where we are paying for services, then the cost of open access publishing right now, they already are transparent. We can see Elsevier has their APC prices put on their website. We have transparency, then we have competition. And even new players can come in and propose new services that are more fitting to what the researchers want and compete for the library business or the institution business. So it's a question of competition that will drive down the cost.
In addition to what Colleen said, I would like to say something else, which is also flagging out that I think this week is the week of peer review, the International Week of Peer Review. So the publishers, I cannot comment, I'm not as professional as you are in publishers competing more, but I suggest also publishers collaborate more. For example, and this is why I noted about the peer review week, for allowing portable peer review notes. So that someone who submitted an article and it was maybe, let's say, rejected to a journal can take and port the results of peer review from that journal to another journal from another publisher. I don't know if it's a good or bad idea, but maybe it's good to consider this portable peer review, which is also in the context of the week of peer review.
I'm just saying that it's a system that does exist, not across. Well, I must say actually that publishers do collaborate about a lot of things. I mean, I show colleagues, which is the collaboration around data, but there are many other situations where we have services that interface. When it comes to the peer review, the system that you described, we have it internally to Elsevier. So if there is already been review, it's good quality, but not really fit with that journals, we suggest the author whether he wants to consider another one that is another journal that is more or less in the same field, And we also consult with the editor because eventually it's an editorial decision. So indeed, because the review has already been done and would be a total waste in that sense. And when it comes to whether open access is more expensive, I would say just for research-intensive universities at the moment with current APCs, I would say that for research-intensive university, it is more expensive open access.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's about that.
So yes. So I suggest to close this panel and to close to finish our today's event. I would like to thank to all of you. Open science is a huge project. It will take a lot of efforts and energy in the next year. Next year, there is the 70th anniversary of CTK. According to GDPR, for those who did approval, we will send a questionnaire. What event do you want? What do you suggest to have? We can do 2 days event, 3 days event, we can do 6 hours event or 2 hours event. This year we decided to have more, how can I say, concentrated to those issues. And if this is so, we will repeat this next year. If there is additional opinion, we will change decision. So thank you very much to all of you, to sponsors, TB especially, to speakers, and also to the audience for a nice day today, and have a nice week. Thank you very much. Thank you.